So before we learn a little bit about this week's Parsha, which, as you know, because you looked it up and you studied it, and some of you received Steve Bretzler's packet, weekly packet on the Torah portion, right? Some of you, yeah. It's quite thorough, quite exhaustive. Bahalotecha is not only a long, complicated verb conjugation. What is being bahalotecha at the beginning of the portion happens to do with the menorah, the first menorah, the menorah, not a Hanukkah, as it turns out. But there's also what we would call the proof text or the original text of the ceremony for removing what we would call removing the Torah from the ark. So just for a little group participation, I keep moving my water, and then I get parched. For a little group participation, and so that I can drink some water, I want you to tell me, what was the first Aron HaKodesh, the first holy ark you ever saw? And describe it a little bit for group participation. Where was the first Aron HaKodesh you ever saw? And you're going to share.
It was in a huge,
Stephen.
classic Reformed synagogue in Philadelphia.
Yes.
Marble, gold, push the button, doors open.
You had a genie. Bing. Yep. How many Torahs? How many Sifrei Torah were there? And that was Rodav Shalom or Ki? Rodav Shalom. How many Torah? 3 or 4. That's it? Huh? That's sort of anticlimactic given how you described the ark. You would expect it like 10 Torahs. But it was big, marble, gold. Very glorious. Very classic. Moorish. Nice. Yeah. Those Yekka Reformed Jews, man, they knew how to do it. Were you going to share?
I'm just going to share that my first ark was this ark.
This was your first ark, that is right. With that Ner Tamid?
Yes.
With Rabbi Plotkin presiding, yes?
Rabbi Plotkin.
Yes. Many of you have been asking, by the way, and Art, I don't know if you were wondering, but we're finally getting the stained glass window for the bottom corner fixed. That's why it's not there. They had to take it and reshape it because, the building settled. And since I got here in 2003, it's been off. So it only took 16 years. So that was your first ark. This beautiful wood ark with the different symbols of the holidays on it. Very nice. Yes, where was yours?
My first one was at B'nai Jeshurun, High Street in North New Jersey, which was a huge cathedral-like dome ceiling, stained glass ceiling, wonderful old style.
Did it have a button?
It did have a button.
Mm-hmm.
Would push the button.
That was a big deal to push the button.
It was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Doors would open.
Mm-hmm.
My first memory is when I was consecrated in kindergarten, and it was a massive ark, and with a very high ledge, and inside was a shelf, and they piled little jars of jelly for sweetness for the people who were being consecrated.
And back in those days, 20 years ago, there were probably 100 consecrants, right? It was a big deal. Was that did Chuck Kroloff end up being the rabbi there? Do you know? He was president of the CC. Oh, Barry Green. I went to rabbinic school with his daughter, Lisa Green, actually.
I wrote a Haggadah with Lisa Green.
Did you really?
The first one.
We're playing Jewish geography.
Yeah. The end.
Yes.
Because I was dressed in my little white silk socks with the lace around, and my little black
Mary Jane's?
Mary Jane,
Mm-hmm.
and my little frilly dress.
Mm.
And before Rabbi Pilcher could give me the jam,
Right.
I needed to reach in and fell head first
Oh, boy.
into the ark with my little feet,
Oh, my gosh.
and the rabbi had to pull me out of the ark.
Oh, my gosh.
So that was my
Oh, my gosh. That's a good story. So we've got a beautiful Philadelphia Road of Shalom Classic Reformed Congregation. We've got the the original congregation of Phoenix, Congregation Beth Israel, and we've got this beautiful, in Short Hills, New Jersey, synagogue, where my friend Matt is now the rabbi, but Lisa Green, Matt Gavertz is the rabbi, Lisa Green was my classmate. So Jewish geography is good. And my friend Aaron Bisno is the rabbi. No, Bill Kuhn. Bill Kuhn is the rabbi. He retired, was the rabbi of Philly. So I have connections to all of these places, and that's very good for me, being the narcissist I am, to make it all about me. We had one or two more? Yes. What was your first arc? Yeah, let's do it. Are we doing like the Quad Cities now? Des Moines, Iowa. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Was it underwhelming, the arc, or yes? Well, it's Midwestern. It's got to be not underwhelming. It's got to be Hamish, understated and elegant. My first arc was also understated and elegant. How about? Oh my God, the group participation. We are on fire. Go, please.
I'm going to cheat. It wasn't my first, because I don't remember my first, but we were one of the first 75 families to start Temple Sinai in Denver.
That was a great arc.
And we had a temporary ark at the First Plymouth Congregational Church.
He called it Big Blue.
And
Was it Big Blue?
Rabbi Swearing would point up to the cross over the ark and say, "That's a T for temple."
That's right. First Plymouth, and that I worked there. I mean, we are really on fire, people. And was it Big Blue? Was Big Blue the ark? It had that ugly fiberglass blue. Okay, we called that Big Blue. Well, Rabbi Zoran called that Big Blue. But the new ark and the new building had a button, and that was gorgeous.
One of the biggest synagogues.
It's beautiful. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, how about two more? Lori, and then two, and then afterwards we'll have more to talk about later. Because otherwise I don't need to do the drosh.
Mine was in Newark, New Jersey, when we came to America from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
There was a shul around the corner from where we lived in Newark, and it was very, very from. And the rabbi wore a stravel and tzitzis and payas.
The whole 9 yards.
And I was friendly with his daughter, Deborah.
Mm-hmm.
So Deborah and I would always play in the mikvah, but I didn't know it was a mikvah. I thought, hey, a swimming pool.
Yeah, a little pool.
And so I was at shul all the time because she was my friend.
And her dad was the rabbi.
And I knew the rabbi. And on Shabbos, my parents weren't there, but I was there. And I was like a little kid then. And I would sit on the bima with Moshe Shia, who was a friend of my parents from Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And I would sit on his lap on the bima.
Mm.
And I had no idea how lucky I was to get to do all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, my parents really did not go, but I did.
Mm.
And I'm 6, 7, 8 years old.
Mm.
So it was cool.
These are all such wonderful memories. Yes, you had one. Your first arc. But do you notice how these arc stories are turning into like really beautiful stories? Yes, and obviously for everyone, a very positive memory is associated.
I was going to go along with Irene, Springfield, Illinois. Classical, the Midwest version of a classic reform. Congregation, very, very unassuming, couple of Torahs, and it was very exciting because the kids got to go. Got to go up, and my big memory was going up at 5 or 6 years old and being able to light the candles.
Oh, nice, nice. You're dying. I know. There's a couple more. Okay, then I can shorten up my thing, and that's a win-win. Go ahead. Oh yeah, 1, 2, 3, and then I have to move on. I have to move on. We'll be here forever. Mm-hmm.
All women, and my grandfather was like a quasi-cantor. Beautiful voice, and he would daven in the middle. They had like a
Was it more of a Sephardic setup? Mm-hmm. So that's where the bima is in the middle of the room.
And the ark was just a velvet cover,
Mm.
and there were probably 4 Torahs in there.
Mm.
And I would lean over the balcony.
Were they the kind with the case? They were encased?
Yes. And lean over the balcony and wave to him and wave to my father. And then eventually they would go.
Come.
So I would go down and sit with them for a little while.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Okay.
Mine was on Synagogue of Baltimore and Chester Street, Baltimore, Maryland.
Baltimore, okay.
And I kind of look forward to going and waiting with my father when they auctioned off the Alias.
Mm-hmm.
And would constantly ask him, because they did it in Yiddish, how much did that go for? How much did that go for? And that was kind of one of my
For those of you not familiar, in traditional congregations, conservative Orthodox congregations, instead of a Kol Nidre appeal, there's typically on Yom Kippur auctioning off of aliyot. So you take the number 18, chai, and multiply it, and it can get up to 100 times chai, or 1,000 times chai, or 10 times chai. It takes up about an hour of the service before they even read. And there are 7 or 8 aliyot for those Torah services, so they do a major fundraising effort during. So that's what we was talking about in Yiddish. How many times chai for the Aliya? So when people think the Kol Nidre appeal and all that is sort of odd to do it, it goes back thousands of years actually. Traditions on Yom Kippur and fundraising, mostly to save the souls of the dead because they are judged also. So not save them. Well, some need saving, I guess, but to help Utz God to give them a year of life, too. Yes. Last one.
Yeah, I was 7 or 8 years old in the Barstow Jewish Center in Queens, New York, and it was a very tall ark looking up and looking like it was 3 stories because I was so little. And that was 1961. I was bar mitzvahed in 1989. Went back there after many years and got married there.
Oh, in the same, in front of the ark.
And I read where the Barstow Jewish Center, because it was so huge, it cost a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to redo it, make it much, much smaller. And I just hope that the ark survives.
The heart, yeah, absolutely. And just to sort of give a little bit of an epilogue to our ark stories, this was not done on purpose, but Jeff Harwin's family is observing yard site tonight for Jeff. And Jeff Harwin, who was a member for 100 years of Beth Israel, not 100 years, but many years, built our ark inside a grove of trees up at Camp Stein in the Pearlstein Chapel. So if you ever get a chance to go up to camp, think about, just be mindful of the fact that's the first ark that a lot of our campers get to see. We have tons of campers whose families aren't affiliated or have single parents or don't live in areas where there are synagogues, can't afford synagogue membership. So that's their 4 weeks of Jewish experience. It's a beautiful handmade wooden ark. And the only problem we've ever had with it was a beehive decided the bees decided to create a beehive inside of it one summer, which was kind of funny, but not so funny. So why did I bring all of this up? And thank you for your participation. And now the anticlimactic part. That was beautiful. And that was so touching because we all associate our own memories, typically with parents and grandparents, and places that immediately take us back to what I think we can agree are moments of transcendence for us. And I think those moments of transcendence being associated sometimes with a funny story or sometimes with remembering exactly what we wore are really part and parcel of what it means to be Jewish. So this week's Parsha, in particularly, and we'll look at this tomorrow morning during Torah study, in Numbers chapter 10 and in the beginning of chapter 11, it says the following. The Israelites are now, as we know, counted. We did this the last couple of weeks. They're counted, they're arranged, they're organized by tribes and the Levites and the Gershonites and the Merarites and all the ites. They're all set. So they're about to depart for the land of Israel. It says they marched from the mountain of God, which is Mount Sinai, a journey for 3 days. The coffer of God's covenant, meaning the Ark of the Covenant, the original Aron HaKodesh, the original Ark, was marching before them. It was at the head of their processional. A journey of 3 days to scout out for them a resting place. Now the cloud of Adonai was over them by day as they marched from camp. Now it was, whenever the Ark of the Covenant was to march, that Moses would say, "Arise, O God, that your enemies may scatter, that those who hate you may flee before you." And when it would rest, when they would put the ark down, Moses would then say, "Return, O God, you of the myriad of divisions of Israel." So in other words, what Moses was doing was, when they would lift the Ark of the Covenant, put it at the head of the line, and go for their walk journey to the next place, Moses would say, "God, go ahead of us to protect us. Leave the ark," because God, Mishkan, remember, God said, "Build for me a Mishkan so that I may dwell among you." And then, when they would finally find a place to camp, Moses would say, "Come back and fill the Aron, fill the ark." And then, it says in the beginning of chapter 11, the people were like those who grieve over ill fortune in the ears of God. When God heard, his anger flared up. This is when they start kvetching, of course. And there blazed up against them a fire of God and ate up the edge of the camp. The people cried out to Moses, and Moses interceded to God, and the fire abated. So they called the name of that place Tevera, blaze, for there had blazed against them a fire of God. In very typical Jewish biblical fashion, they have this wonderful ceremony of the ark being dispatched, God being dispatched, and then returning. And what's the first thing they do in chapter 11? They kvetch, right? The Numbers is filled with these moments of kvetching. Now, God takes on a new tactic in Numbers. As opposed to using Moses for interceding with the people, God just starts to schmeiss them. God just says, "You know what? Enough of the complainers. The complainers are toxic. We're just going to take care of them, wipe them out." So when we remove the Torah from the ark, the same words that are used in the Bible, and this is what we'll study tomorrow morning, in the biblical passages, we still use today. When we march the Torah around, we're not marching the whole ark around the congregation, we're marching the Torah around the congregation. And the purpose of this idea of marching the Torah, and by the way, in the original Reform movement, in classical Reform congregations, they did not march the Torah in a hakafah, because they believed that that was idolatry. Marching a Torah around, right? And marching a Torah around, have people kiss it and bow to it and touch it with their siddur, their talis. They thought it was like idolatry. They were against it, the original Reformers. There are two opinions, by the way. One is about why these two verses about marching the Torah around, and then this verse about God blowing everyone up, creating these fires. So why are these in such close proximity? We've got this wonderful thing and then God schmeissing everyone. Well, there are two opinions in the Talmud. One says they indicate that the verses don't belong here. And we talk about this in Torah study all along. This is a later edit. It's put in. It's out of context, this part about God blowing everyone up. The other says that they indicate that these verses should be seen as a completely separate book, right? There's no place for this act, if you will, of God here. They march out for the journey, they have the Torah with them, and then all of a sudden people start to misbehave. The Talmud says when the Torah states that they marched from the mountain of God, that it means that they turned away from God at that moment. And so the understanding of the rabbis in that regard is that they still were slaves. They didn't get it. Right? They left Sinai. When they left Sinai, just like when Moses went up to the mountain and they built the golden calf, that their impulse is to do the opposite, the antithesis of what they should be feeling at that moment. So throughout this Shabbat, I want you to think about, and I know what I'm saying is a little bit loose. It may not make a whole lot of sense, but it will if you come to Torah study tomorrow morning. That's my shameless plug for Torah study. We've got this conflict, this paradox here. Think about it. We are all talking about, at the beginning, these beautiful experiences, these vulnerable moments that we've had in front of the Holy Ark, in front of the Aron HaKodesh. You get what it means to be a Jew who is searching for, aspiring for a connection with the divine, with the holiness of the Ark. You get that. Those of you who shared, and even those of you who didn't but were thinking about it, you get what that means. It means a different kind of emblazing, and it's an emblazed memory, an emblazed moment of transcendence. We miss those moments in our lives because our lives are chaotic, and we've got the phones and the emails and everything. And to have that kind of memory and go right back to that moment means that you get it. Our ancestors didn't. They had Sinai. They had the Ten Commandments. They had Moses and Aaron and Miriam. And it says as soon as they turned their back away from Sinai and started walking, as Moses begins to incant this whole, hey, God, go out before us, they lose that memory immediately. Their short-term memory is gone. And they start to complain, we didn't get this and we didn't get that. On the Shabbat, I want you to think about what it means to not take your memories for granted, number one, which you all really did not do tonight. You shared beautiful memories. But more importantly, think about the moments when you start to take things for granted, when you, so to speak, turn your back away from those moments of holiness and enter into the chaos that is the world. Shabbat is the great equalizer. This is the time that we get to recenter ourselves, that we get to go back to those moments of holiness. And I just want for us, all of us, to walk around with these moments of holiness that are emblazoned in our hearts, that often involve our parents and our grandparents and the people who got, to sit on the other side of the mechitza and go sit up on the bima. And I mean, these are big deals, right? To take those with us from this place. The work of Judaism is constant. Shabbat is one day. These moments are memories that are in your minds. Take them with you from this place and throughout the Shabbat. And when you're about to have a moment during the week when maybe you're going to fetch, or show that you're not so grateful, or get into an argument with someone, remember, you have a higher purpose, higher meaning, and you have the ability, really, of using those memories of holiness to share and create a moment of transcendence as we have tonight. And that all started thousands of years ago with the Ark. So tomorrow morning we'll finish the conversation and give it a little bit more meat so that we can understand exactly what it is that I just said. But please, thank you for sharing those beautiful, beautiful thoughts and memories of your Aron HaKodesh moments in your life. And know that you're part of a story where we've been doing that for 3,000 plus years. Unfortunately, according to the Torah, our ancestors didn't quite click for them. So we'll study that a little bit more tomorrow morning. Shabbat Shalom. We have a few announcements, and so it's great to have Allison Kierman, a member of our board of directors, to share some upcoming events. And then I will read our weekly update